Hi, my name is Lizzie Gass. I'm the author of Witchy Watercolor, which comes out in just a few weeks on August 26th, and in it you'll find all of these wonderful tutorials to make your own watercolor and ink illustrations of the individual items and then the shelves. And I thought today we could take a look at some of my favorite watercolor supplies. To start off, the question I get most often is, what kind of pens do I use? And these are what I use. The important note here is that they are waterproof, so I can do the whole drawing with these and then paint on top of them without them bleeding. This is the size I use most commonly for these individual shelves, and then this one is great for little details, and we'll see if you can see the difference in the size. So that's the 01 and the 005. And then if you want even finer lines, you can take the lid off and let it dry out for a few minutes. But just make sure you don't leave the lid off for too long or it'll dry out all the way. For the underlying pencil sketches, I like to use these 0.2mm drafting pencils since they make really light, fine lines that are easy to erase. You can use a regular mechanical pencil or a traditional pencil, but the lines might be a little bit more difficult to erase and they may show through more in your final illustration. So it just depends on kind of what you're painting and how big it is and what you like to use. Next, let's talk about brushes. These are the ones I recommend in the book. They're the ones I use most commonly. They're from Trekell. And the size of the brush you'll need will really depend a lot on the size of the painting you want to make. These were all done on 5x7 paper. But if you were going to do something on 8x10 or larger, these brushes might not be the ideal size because you'd be spending forever to fill in any given area. So I like this size 3 for almost everything. The 5 out of 0 is great for slightly smaller details, and then totally optional, you can get a super duper tiny one for itty bitty details. And then it can be helpful to have a really big one if you want to do like a colored wash behind your shelf or just fill in larger areas. But if you were just going to get 2, I would recommend these 2 sizes. Now let's talk about paper. Paper is one of those things that's really dependent on personal preference. This is what I use for the shelves, this hot pressed watercolor paper. It comes in a block. This is what it looks like. And then you can compare that to cold pressed watercolor paper, which you can see has a lot more texture to it. And I personally find it much more difficult to get the level of detail I want with the cold pressed paper, but you can absolutely do it, and lots of people prefer painting on cold pressed paper, so I would recommend trying both and seeing what works best for you. It can be handy to have around some scrap paper, ideally the same kind you're going to be painting on, to test out colors because they can look really different on your palette versus on paper. So whenever I end up with extra bits, I hang on to them, and then you end up with these pretty little pieces of test paper. Up next, paint. There are so many wonderful options here, and I've tried to use relatively common or easily matched colors throughout the book so that you can hopefully use whatever you already have on hand. I use these Daniel Smith watercolors, which are lovely, but they tend to be rather expensive. If you were just going to get a couple of colors, I would recommend Buff Titanium and German Greenish Raw Umber. They are great for mixing with other colors to kind of mellow them out a little bit. But if you're looking for a whole set of introductory watercolors, I would recommend one of the Arteza sets. They come in, I think, sets of 12 and 24, and they are lovely, lovely colors. They hold up well and tend to be much more cost effective. Watercolors can come in either tubes like this or pans, which might be what you're more familiar with. For these, they are wet, and so you would squeeze it out onto your palette, which can be either ceramic or metal like this one with these plastic tubs. And then it dries out, and you just re-wet it with water. Unlike something like acrylic, where once it's dry forever, watercolor, you want it to dry out like that. And then you just get it wet again, and you can leave it that way for years and years, and it'll be totally fine and still usable, which is awesome. Another option for your watercolor palette, you can use just a regular plate or a dish, something from Goodwill, or you can get something like this. This is the handmade ceramic palette made by Sylvan Clayworks, and It's just a beautiful way to keep all of my paints together. You've got a nice big mixing surface on it, but you can use whatever you have on hand. Just keep in mind that it needs to be non-porous or it will stain whatever you've put on there. Other useful kind of odds and ends would be a water cup. Some people recommend having two, so you've got one for dirty water for cleaning your brushes and then a new one for clean water for mixing on your palette. It's a great idea. I don't generally remember to do it. You can use any kind of glass that you want. I just would recommend having something dedicated for that purpose so you're not switching back and forth and then drinking out of that glass too. You'll want some paper towels or something else just to dab your brush on. Paper towels are nice because you don't have to worry about staining anything. You'll want an eraser. You can use a regular one. These kneadable ones are really nice because you can roll them into kind of a log shape and then roll them across the top of your pencil sketch when you're ready to erase it. And it helps to erase the pencil sketch without pulling on the fibers quite as much, so it can be a little bit gentler on the paper. But whatever kind of eraser you have on hand should work fine as long as it's clean and isn't leaving marks on the paper when you rub it back and forth. You may also want to use a ruler if you want perfectly straight lines, or of course you could use the edge of a book or something else like that. You don't have to use a ruler, and you don't have to have perfectly straight lines, whatever you prefer. I think that covers just about all my favorite watercolor supplies. Please let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and I'll do my best to answer. Don't forget to pre-order your copy of Witchy Watercolor before it comes out August 26th, or if you're watching this after August 26th, be sure to check it out. It's got lots of fun projects, and I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching.